Hello and welcome to the first episode of Trash to Terrain. What do you have a lot of lying around in your house? I'm going to guess sprues. And in this episode we're going to show you how you can turn sprues into 4 different things. I've been doing quite a lot of mass paintings and lots of armies and fancy videos, and I thought it'd be nice to start off with a palette cleanser. First up, we're going to need to take our sprues and snip them all off. This is one of the more laborious tasks that you're going to have to do, but don't worry, it doesn't take that long. Next, we're going to want to clean off all of the excess knobs and little bits that are going to get in the way. The smoother you do this, the better your end result's going to look. Watch out for where I miss out a little copyright sign in my video. Glue all of these parts onto 2 longer pieces. Your palettes can be as big or small as you want them to be. To create a more wood-like effect, we're going to score the plastic. This is going to give us a nice ridged effect. When we want to dry brush, it's going to make it look more like planks. Repeat this for as many as you like. I plan on gluing these together as a makeshift barricade to put up on the battlefield. I'm probably going to put these flat, so what would be really cool is if I'd done an entire mountain, but funnily enough I actually ran out of sprues. Curse tidying away. To paint them, I'm using Vallejo, and I'm going to use a ginormous, oversized dry brush to cover the entire model in a lighter brown. If you've watched my dry brush video, linked down below, you'll know that starting with a darker colour will make your life easier. I decided I was going to paint these models, some with dry brushing, some with contrast paints, some with speed paints, to get a nice bit of variety. Brush all over with a nice beige, come in with a lighter cream, and then do a final highlight on the broken parts with a lighter white. And there we have it, the final result. If you're thinking, hey Sam, there's some extra bits on that definitely weren't in that video, stick around till the end and I'll show you what I did. Next up, I'm going to stake my reputation on making some nice barricades. These are more rounded frames. I think I got these off of some Mantic miniatures, but don't hold me to that. Cut them into lengths and we're going to form them into X's. Now, the secret weapon, the pencil sharpener. Sharpen each of these until you've got a nice rounded point. You could also use a scalpel to hack these up. Don't make them too sharp, otherwise you might take someone's eye out. Once you've got these, we're going to take a little bit of twine. If you're going to use twine, I recommend supergluing either end together so that it's going to make it much easier when we want to wrap it around. If I was to redo this, I would instead take only a single strand of this wool rather than taking all 3 as one. Another thing I would change is I use Mully-Put here, and if you keep a sharp eye out, you see this falls apart like 3 times. If I was going to do this again, I would drill all the way through to attach them. Again, because of the nice black undercoat, I'm going to dry brush everything on. Starting with a dark brown colour all over, a slightly brown over the top of this. And then what we're going to want to do is focus on those end points, the sharpened bits where the wood has split. Once you've got this, glue them all back together. And now we've got our nice first barricade. I have to admit, I thought it would be a bit longer, so you'll definitely want to include maybe 10 sets of stakes rather than just 4 as I did here. If you're hitting a wall in your hobby, this is a great palette cleanser. I had this bright idea. I thought I was IQ 1000ing it. I glued the sprue sticks together thinking that when I cut them they would stay together and I wouldn't need to go and do it all over again. Sadly, I was completely wrong, and within a few clips everything falls apart. I love how you can even read the despair in my hands there. I was not amused. So instead I cut them all out by hand. If I was to do this again, I would instead cut only partially the way through each sprue. This way, when I want to glue them together, there's still a single unit. I glued each piece, one on top of the other, to create my rickety wall. Don't worry about this being perfect. In fact, if it looks a little bit wobbled and warped, it will really sell the old effect. Another thing I'd be tempted to change is use some mortar in between it. This will make it look more natural. Something like Vallejo's mud stuck in between two bricks would look really nice. Make sure the wall is big enough for your models to hide behind, and that way it'll look a little bit more authentic. I also like to create a bow in the middle of my walls, meaning my models can look over some parts but not others. To really sell this aged wall, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use contrast paints to just pick out individual little pieces of the wall. Purple and yellow, if you look closely at buildings, is one of the most common colours that your eye will pick up. I'm using contrast here because if I was going to use speed paint, this next step, where I decide to wash it all over with Gravelord Grey, could cause me problems. With speed paint, you need to let it dry for quite a long time, otherwise you risk reactivation. Now, I didn't really care about reactivation, so when I've gone in with a dry brush of lighter grey over the top of all these bricks, it's knowing that it might drag that grey a little bit, and I'm absolutely fine with that. And there we go, a sprue wall. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Sam, I can still see cut off bits. Well, that's right. And I wanted to do this as quickly and as messily as possible. Because if you can look at this and go, I could do better, yes you can. Get your sprues out, tag me in it with hashtag #TheBasicBrushTrashTerrain, or just the hashtag TrashTerrain. I'd love to see what you come up with. I hope this next one's not offensive. Yep, we're doing a fence. First up, we're going to need 2 longer sections. That's going to be the main framework. Make sure the height is Make sure the height of your external pieces measure up to what you're expecting it to be. I'm not entirely certain what I was thinking. Space Marines are one of the biggest models that you can get, and this Space Marine couldn't see over the top of it. So, not sure who built this fence. A giant? Take time gluing each of these pieces in place. Try and get one of the sides to be level. That's going to be your top. Often planks will get rotten or animals will break through the bottom, but the tops tend to be somewhat level. If you see any of your sticks are much longer than the others, you're going to want to cut those off so that we can get this laying flat. Again, it's a rickety old fence. It doesn't really matter if it's perfect, and I even like the idea of sticking inside of it some gaps so your models can spot through. Now, this wouldn't stand upright by itself. You could have made 2 pieces and put them side to side, that would have worked, but instead I decided to do it straight on. So with this, as you can see, it's not very stable. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to attach on some supports at the back. There are a million ways that you could do this. Another way that I considered it was embedding it into some other terrain. Maybe if you got some of that high density foam, the expanded stuff, the blue and pink, you could have stuck it straight in there. I would strongly recommend you don't copy me here. Deciding to contrast this over purely white was an awful idea. It took me like 3 or 4 coats to even get the colour I was interested in, and it looked really streaky. To hide my mistake, I'm going in with a gigantic dry brush and a light grey. I'm going to put that all over, spending a lot more time at the bottom where more grime will gather up. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank my patrons. Thank you for helping this all happen. Now, the next steps are my secret to make these look even more authentic. Links to each of these 3 products are in the description below. Apply this liberally along the bases of each of your models. I'm going to hide the cardboard cutout beneath the wall all the way around. I'm also going to deliberately splatter some of this higher up. Algae and damp tends to manifest as this sort of green colour, so I'm using here some Citadel shade to just patch it all over the models. No, I'm only showing you one of each of the terrain pieces as I'm applying these 3 stages, but I did do it to all of them. My favourite though has got to be Streaking Grime. You want to put this in the places where more moisture would gather and dribble down. So that's what I'm doing here. I didn't do it particularly well on the other pieces, but I'm really happy with how this wall came out. You can also use this to do a shade all over your models. Check out this video by Zumikito. It's really good if you want to try and use it with a slightly different twist. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments down below so I know to make a part 2. If you enjoyed this video, this is another great video and another one that YouTube thinks you'll also enjoy. Remember to keep battling the backlog.